What the? Oh, there we go. Now he's in focus.
Oh hey, God. Everyone. Welcome back to the PetaPixel podcast. It's me, Jordan Drake, and I'm joined by my good friends. Chris say your names.
Oh it's God. Chris, a real human.
Yeah, and I guess I'm Jaren. For those just listening, Jordan has got the puppet version of himself out.
Yeah, it's been a little while. I'm excited to be back here on screen. Guys,
we've run out of ideas, folks.
I'm a little bit curious.
Yeah.
You know, Chris and Jaren, we know a lot about what they care about photographically, but I'm curious. Gentlemen, what would you say is your signature dish?
Like
say
food?
You got company over, you want to really impress them. Yeah, what is your meal you would make to delight and enchant?
I mean, haven't you guys already had the one that I've done?
Is it the lasagna, Jaren?
That is one of them, although lately I've been pretty proud of my prime rib.
Oh, yes. You did make a really nice skirt steak, too. Oh, is the human coming back? That didn't look awkward at all. I would say my signature dish is
there, Joy.
Wow. I would say my signature dish is a classic turkey dinner. I love making Thanksgiving dinner. I think my turkey is on point. I do a maple balsamic kind of glaze, and I do mashed potatoes, but 50% sweet potato, 50% potato, just for Thanksgiving. It's really nice, a little bit of sweetness, stuffing, all of that stuff, and my gravy is fantastic. I put cayenne pepper in there. I'm most proud of that meal. I love making it, and it always turns out great.
See, that seems really seasonal, though, Chris. Like, what if it
doesn't have to
What
be.
if it's July?
You can have a turkey in July.
I'd still make it. Sure, why not? No, I'm going Thanksgiving dinner. Like that's,
I'm curious. I've never had the turkey. I've been hearing about the turkey for
you refused to come over
a decade and a half at this point.
What would you make
it?
Would you make it if it wasn't Thanksgiving? Like if I came over?
In Jordan's defense, he's got like 86 extended family members across him and his wife's family that all tie up his time. You know, it's like small town, like lots of family, lots of kids.
I think it's a statistically average number of people, but
no, it's not. No, your parents have been very prolific. And so, I get that you don't have time to come over with me
sometimes they
to have
listen.
Thanksgiving dinner, but you're missing out because I guarantee it's better than what you're having at your other places.
Jaren, what do you got?
I already said, it's a prime rib. Prime rib probably right now. The lasagna used to be the one. I mean, it's the lasagna that has converted people who say they don't like lasagna.
Your lasagna is very good. Technically, it's a family friend's lasagna, but you recreate it perfectly.
But I think I'm going to go prime rib or my brisket. I do a smoked brisket, like a 14-hour.
Nice.
Which is not usually that long when you think about like how long briskets take to smoke. Some people will smoke them for a lot longer than that. But I use a Kamado style grill, and something about that I think increases the speed at which it brisketizes. So it usually takes about 14 hours. It's not as long.
Such a man answer though, because now I feel like Jordan's going to go with a very classic, smoked or barbecue dish as well. But let's see, Jordan.
Well, yeah. So first of all, I am considering dabbling in the smoking land. We talked about that on our recent Nikon trip, which we're going to be talking about at length on this episode. But what brought this up is I was talking to my wife, and I'm like, I don't have a signature dish because I cook the thing most of the time, and then she comes in and does the seasoning because my wife is one of those people who doesn't follow recipes, just throws things at a pot until it's amazing. So the closest thing I can come up with is I make a very good layered nachos with a variety of things on it, but it is not a technically sophisticated dish at all. So
that doesn't mean anything. It can be good.
Yeah, I thought you were going to go with a dad answer, but you're going with a bachelor answer.
That was basically what kept me alive, is a combination of pierogies when I needed my heavy potato and the yellow corn nacho, the best nacho. Because you go like a white, that thing's going to break if you put the correct amount of cheese and vegetables on it. It's going down. So you need the crispiness of a good circular corn chip. And baby, you got a stew going.
Wow. Well, that was interesting. Typically at this point, we would transition to moving the podcast. But there's one more thing I want to say. This sweatshirt that I'm wearing. Hold on, let me turn around.
Oh, you got it?
Yes. Well, this is the one he gave me.
So
this has.
Oh, that's
higher. Yeah,
and a little to
your
the side.
right, left.
I can only see 6 of
towards
the 9.
your chair. Yes. There you go. Nice, nice.
All right, so it's got the simulations on it, and it's a green sweatshirt for anyone that's just listening. It's a Fujifilm green hoodie with film simulations on the back. Andreas, I think is how I should say it. He's the divisional head at Fujifilm UK. I literally took this off his back.
Yeah, you did literally take the shirt off his back.
So we were at like a dinner, like a big dinner at the hotel, one of the nights in Prague, and I turned around and I saw someone that I didn't know at the time wearing this sweater, and I'm like, that is a cool color, and I love the film simulations on the back. So I went up and I accosted him, and I said, where can I buy this sweatshirt? And he says, you can't. I made it just for my team in the UK. And I'm like, well, that is extremely disappointing. And I left dejected. Well, the next day he came up to me and Chris and said that, I have one of these for myself back in my office. You can have this one if you don't mind that I've been wearing it. And I'm like, I do not mind that you've been wearing it.
If anything, that raises the value. Yeah. Guys,
So,
before we go to the, it is dope. Totally fits you.
Yeah.
Anyway, before we go to the intro, I just want to say I planned to use the puppet for this entire intro, but my knees would not have that bent over here underneath the light with an HDMI cable precariously right beside my ass that I could bump out. So anyways, I'm back up here. Let's start the show.
The intro may have made you assume that both Fujifilm and R.L. Winston fly rods are our sponsors, but in fact, they are not. Our sponsor right now is you guys at home, because you can help us make all of our project and creative dreams come true. And the best way to do that is to look at getting a PetaPixel.com membership. This is a very reasonable price, $3 a month, or even less, $30 a year, and you get some really nice benefits. So the first benefit, if you like to look at the articles on PetaPixel.com, having a membership will get rid of all of those pesky ads, which are very necessary to keeping the site running. But if you're a member, you don't have to deal with those. And that's really nice. The other thing you're going to get is a 25% discount off the merch store. And we've got lots of cool stuff coming in there. Who knows? Those Fujifilm hoodies might even make their way in there. I don't know. We've already talked about feet pics and barbecue sauce. Those are not on there. I've been told those are not in the merch store. But there's lots of good stuff. Lots of great t-shirts. We've got more designs coming out, hoodies, all sorts of stuff. So nice discount there. As well, if you're really into pixel peeping, or you want to take a part in seeing the image quality for yourself of the products that we review, you get exclusive access to JPEGs and RAWs from the products we review, so you can see for yourself, what is that lens flare characteristic like? What's that sensor doing? Is this sharp? Is this not sharp? It's a really cool thing for our PetaPixel.com members, so definitely consider it. And there's other benefits too, so you definitely want to check it out. But most importantly, you will be making this channel possible. You'll be making this podcast possible, and we absolutely appreciate the support of our PetaPixel.com members. And I don't know, some of their exciting stuff will come up on the merch store. I promise you. Some of it will be dirty. Some of it will be sexy. Some of it will be tantalizing. You're going to love it. Don't give me that face, Jaron.
I don't have anything to add to that.
We will give you the shirts off our back for a PetaPixel.com membership.
Tell you what, if someone sees me wearing a PetaPixel shirt in public and they say, can I have that? I will be tempted to give it to them, because I know that someone could be like me and appreciate it.
Well, you're going to have to start wearing undershirts everywhere you go then, Sharon.
Have a spare in my bag.
Yeah.
I'm gonna purposely wear t-shirts and underwear for like 3 days straight, no showers, and then I will mail that out to our PetaPixel.com members that really want it. So there you go.
Gross. Very, very gross.
We do have an episode
That's my
coming
culture.
up here.
You can't make it gross.
That is going to cost us a little bit of money, and it's things like the memberships that make that all possible for us to not exclusively rely on product launches, so you guys get a cool, interesting change of scenery, but so that we can take the initiative ourselves and go do something awesome, and it's all thanks to the support of you.
That's a far more measured and immature answer.
Well, because I'm not giving people sweaty clothes I've already worn. That is specifically the domain of Chris and Jaron, I believe.
Their loss. All right.
Alrighty then, let's get to the news. And the first bit of stuff we're going to talk about is what Canon announced last week.
Canon.
So they
lots of
announced
Canon.
a PowerShot V1 and the R50V. Now, before we get into these, I'm going to go a little bit out of order and pull a comment from the Never Read the Comments section and put it in here because it's relevant. From Luis Arturo Hernandez Ramirez. I think I got that all correct.
Nailed
Why
it.
are you guys invited to some events / get some products beforehand and sometimes not? I've been watching the new Canon videos and I'm like, where's PetaPixel's review? But you clearly didn't get one, even though you're so big on the camera review department. So
I want to say, why am I invited to some parties, not manufacturing events, but just some parties, and not invited to others? What's going on with that as well, guys?
wait, is this a direct reference to something I don't understand?
No, I'm just saying, like, sometimes you're invited to things, sometimes you're not. Like, that's part
I
of life.
invite you to think. You're trying to make a metaphor, an analogy. I mean, I invite you to Thanksgiving dinner every year. You don't come, so that's your fault.
To answer this question directly, it's because so there's two things happening here. One is that Canon USA's PR, which manages their relationship with journalists and media, they haven't gotten samples ahead of time for a majority of products for several years now. Sometimes that changes. Sometimes they'll do like the R52 and the R1 launch. Yeah. That's an exception. But they took us somewhere and they had them there for us. Then we didn't actually get final units for quite a while after that. In this case specifically, they did have some units, but they only had influencers, EOL, and other types of folk in that sphere there. They did not have any media or journalists at this thing. They kind of just wanted to focus on the influency stuff, which is why we were not invited.
Yeah. I mean, there's interesting backstories behind here, like looking behind the veil and how this works. And I mean, there's a lot of times where events will overlap. I mean, this is a perfectly good case where we went to Prague with Fujifilm, and it was happening at the same time.
Two-thirds of the team went to Prague.
Sorry. And by the way, since it's related on that note, we were limited on like who could go, and since there was like executive interviews, that's why it was.
That's why they wanted Jaron there for sure. And then we figured, and Jordan was gracious enough to be like, well, Chris has always wanted to go to Prague, and we want to get photographic content, which we did, and so it all worked out.
I got my Amadeus cells, so it worked.
There you go. Fine. See, so you're
Jaron's Amadeus cells. Sorry, off topic. Continue.
Yeah, off topic. But so sometimes there's overlap and we can't do it. There's lots of events that we have to turn down because there's just other projects that we have to do, or family events, or whatever, right? I mean, normal stuff there. But also, like there are different groups of creators that are invited on certain trips. And sometimes it's a mishmash of both influencers, ambassadors, and press, journalists, which we consider ourselves as journalists. And I would say that journalists are kind of few and far between now, right? The market is largely influencers, and they are paid spokespeople, no doubt. Like there's no two ways about that. And then for us as journalists, we don't get paid to go on these trips, although we do appreciate the trips themselves, but that lets us maintain that unbiased nature so that we can review the products. And to be honest, most companies do appreciate having that honest interpretation. They like having that feedback and that honest, more authentic kind of thing. And so we do get invited to a lot of events, but it depends on the marketing. It depends on their budgets. It depends on what they want to do or who they think will benefit from these products. And so that was the situation in this case.
Well, with that said, let's talk a little bit about these, because yes, you guys will be reviewing both of these products. They're on the calendar. Our units should be in soon if they're not already in. I don't think they're in yet. I think they're arriving.
No, we
this
have
week.
them.
You have them? Yeah, Great. So you have them in. Great.
Yeah.
So
we're going to be looking at them.
Let's talk about the first one, the PowerShot V1, which is the one we already knew about. We saw this at CP Plus. Anything you guys want to add to this that's new or interesting? I guess the price we didn't know about, $900 for this thing, and it's competing against one of those Sony ZV cameras whose names I cannot keep straight.
Yeah,
just ZV1 too.
Just ZV1. The E's are for interchange for E-mount. I just figured that out. Oh man, I've been like, why? Okay,
that does
great.
make sense.
I did it.
Just the ZV1, yeah.
Mark II.
Mark II. Yeah.
And I think the pricing is like right in line with that. It's pretty obvious that they're going straight at Sony.
Yeah.
This sensor is larger, right? It's bigger
yes,
than
it
the
is.
one. Yeah.
It's basically, there's a little bit of confusion about it. So it's wider than Micro Four Thirds, but not quite as tall. But the surface area is actually very, very similar. So I would just compare it directly to Micro Four Thirds in terms of image quality.
For video purposes is going to be perfectly acceptable. Absolutely. I mean, we still shoot Micro Four Thirds video all the time with our GH cameras, and I'm sure the photos will be fine too. I mean, these both have built-in zoom lenses. I guess the Canon's going to be a little bit slower than the ZV-1.2's 18-50 lens. It does go slightly wider. I think that'll appeal to the vlog people out there. But yeah, this is, again, effectively cameras that are being made for vlogging purposes, right, Jordan? I mean, that's kind of this big push that everybody's been going on for years now. Yeah. And we're kind of still skeptical about how well that market does. I think some people are taking the lion's share of that market.
Well, I think Sony did incredibly well with the original ZV-1, and probably the Mark II did well because that's both pre-Pocket 2. But I mean, for vlogging, like the Pocket 2 owns that market. So yeah, I keep using the phrase creator camera. Both of Canon's announcements fall into this, which is, something you can set up a shot, talk to camera, use it as a webcam on your desk. That's also some of the functionality on this. That's where these guys are really going to excel, where, a Pocket cam, like, it's going to be a little bit awkward to use it as like a standard conventional video camera, especially because that screen you're not going to be able to see from more than, a foot away from it. So these do still have some advantages. But yeah, I think it's a much smaller market than probably when the R&D started on this, and Sony owned that market and everyone was like, oh, we got to get a piece of that. But things have changed in the last couple of years.
Well, the other one is the R50V, which I have to admit, I like the design of this camera.
Me too.
I think it looks cool. This is very much un-Canon, actually, in my opinion. A lot of their cameras don't look like sick. This one actually is like it's like metal looking and looks awesome. I think that looks cool.
It does look cool.
It's an APS-C camera that is video focused. Does it have IBIS?
It does not, no. So this is based on the R50, and on Canon's APS-C, you had to move up to the 7 to get IBIS on it. That is the big strike on it. But again, I think they're just looking at what Sony's doing, right? ZV-E10, ZV-E10 II, same deal. No IBIS in those, which is quite smart. But the clever thing that they did is put a very wide kit lens on this. So if you are using the digital stabilization, you're still going to get like a reasonable wide angle in terms of coverage on that, because it introduces a new 14 to 30 millimeter lens, which is crazy.
Power zoom.
And is image stabilized, not particularly fast, but that does provide your stabilization there.
Yeah, f4 to 6.3.
Yeah. This is interesting too, Sergio. Like this is interesting because like the V1 and a lot of the Sony cameras and stuff, they're still primarily video cameras and creator cameras, but they do have a photographic aspect to them. The R50V, obviously you can shoot photos, but it's very clear when you look at the handling and design, like photos is not really the main emphasis here. They're giving you tons of custom video modes. It's really trying to make this more of a cinematic camera as the push.
Yeah, they're saying it's kind of their entry point to the C series, which I think might be a little bit of a stretch. What I will say that I want on all cameras, quarter 20 for horizontal and vertical shooting, which is really smart. I think a lot of people are just going to leave this thing locked off in vertical orientation. We've been on trips where we're trying to bring little travel tripods, and one thing that they all suck at is vertical shooting. So this is a great way to just keep that camera centered.
Yeah, multiple record buttons. I mean, really, the rounded corners are cool. It's a really nice design.
I told you, it looks sick.
And obviously it opens up the mount so that, you have the option to use different lenses if you want. But that kit lens looks interesting.
Can we just pepper our review? Can we pepper our review with Jaron just saying like, and it looks sick, it's rad, check it out, and we could just drop one of those in every 30 seconds.
It's yes, you can do that. I don't want you to, but you could.
Oh, yeah. I want to.
$650 for this without a lens. With the lens included, it is $850. So that is a cheaper package than the V1, which is interesting.
Yeah, I mean, the V1's going to get you better image quality if you just stick with the kit lens, because we do have, a reasonably large sensor and the faster lens on there. But yeah, just having the option, especially now that we've got some Sigma APS-C lenses out there, that 16-1.4 would be pretty great on this. Makes things a lot more interesting. So yeah, I'm looking forward to reviewing it. And we can say, because this thing's announced, we're going to be walking around with this sucker in Vegas at NAB. So get ready to see us vlogging up a storm with Canon's voice.
See how it goes. The next product, though, is also a Canon product, and this is one that, it's video-ish because it's part of Canon's VCM lenses, which are designed to be used for cinema and hybrid creators. That's what they have in mind: minimal focus breathing, but in clickless apertures if you want stuff. But it also has some interest as a photography lens, and we'll talk about that. It is a 20mm f1.4 L series, Canon's first attempt at making one of these for this mount.
Yeah.
I think the
widest f1.4 ever. Sorry, Jordan, go ahead.
Well, Canon's widest f1.4, right?
Canon's widest, yeah.
We've seen
Sigma makes one too.
Yeah, a lot of the third parties do at this point. But I think it's kind of interesting because, it is designed to be their hybrid photo video, but these are not this entire series of lenses. Like, they're all matched, same filter diameter. You should be able to pop up. The weights are very similar, so you shouldn't have to refloat if you're using a gimbal, is kind of the idea behind them. But I mean, these are actually quite expensive lenses. We look at, something like what Panasonic did with their matched f1.8. Those are all quite affordable. So you can just make a quick set of video specific lenses. Where here, I think there might be a little bit of pushback from photographers like, man, we want some 1.4 lenses in RF mount. We've been saying this for a while. It's like 1.8 or 1.2. Those are your options, basically. So now we're seeing 1.4s, but I can tell you, based on the price, you're paying a significant premium for a lot of that video functionality on it. So I just want to know, because usually when we see video optimized lenses with like better breathing characteristics and stuff, they're a little bit worse optically than the dedicated photo lenses. So that's part of why we want to get this thing in and test it, right, Chris?
That's exactly it. Because, I mean, these are L series, no doubt. I mean, so you're going to pay Canon L series prices, and they're always expensive. And there are features, for example, like the aperturing we talk about. Well, it's clickless, right? And that can be kind of annoying for photography users. It's not the end of the world, but it's a little bit annoying because you don't get that tactile feedback to know where you are. But also, that aperture we've talked about only works on the latest Canon RF bodies, so it's going to be basically a dead control ring, for photography. If you're going to use it on older bodies. And at the same time, though, Canon is saying, and this is why we want to test it, Canon is saying that in this particular lens, they are trying to make corrections to things like coma and astigmatism for astrophotography. And that would be very cool. So again, I want to see that. A lot of companies will say, oh, we've adjusted our lens to compensate for this stuff, but you still get tons of astigmatism. So we'll see what this is like. But that would be nice if it has some use as a astrophotography lens. 20mm 1.4 is ideal for that kind of work, in my opinion. Maybe a little bit wider, but this will be good for that. So that I'm eager to play with. I imagine it'll be sharp at 1.4, but as you say, anytime that they make these lenses that don't breathe and do have good corrections for video, they don't always have the sharpest results, but we'll see.
The Sigma one you mentioned was originally a $900 lens. It is currently available for $700, but only for Sony. So and it looks significantly larger too.
And we should say the Sigma 20mm 1.4 was optimized for photography and photographic applications. Yeah,
absolutely.
But you can't use it on a Canon anyway. So
no.
That's fine, I guess.
But these new VCM lenses are nice. I mean, the voice coil motors is what VCM stands for. They're supposed to have very smooth, accurate focusing for video work, where you don't get any jittering or anything like that. So, I mean, it's an interesting product, but expensive.
I thought VCM was Tamron. I don't know. Who knows?
No, they do VCM as well. Voice coil motor.
Yep, they do. The last thing on this group of stuff that we talked about last week that we didn't know what they were going to be. This is the Sony's teaser. Was that thing that I said that the comments pointed out was an extension for the Venice. It's extremely expensive, but it is
so
that
weird.
Yeah, it's Jordan. I think you mentioned that they designed something like this for like the Top Gun movies, and they're just like, why not?
Because then you can just throw the whole camera, like all the cooling, the storage, all that, in the trunk of the. No, jets don't have trunks, but in the back of the jet, or the back of the F1 car in the case of the F1 movie that's currently shooting, and then just get the sensor on a little mobile device. And what I found kind of interesting is it's an E-mount, not a PL mount on this, although you could certainly adapt it to PL. Again, just to keep, you've got a lot of very small lens options in the E-mount. Would make a ton of sense. But it's also recording gyro data. So if you're shooting at like a slow shutter speed, you're still going to get some weirdness with a lot of bouncy footage. But for slow motion stuff, now you've given the editors the option to just slap on perfect digital stabilization after the fact as well, which is kind of a unique benefit to this.
Mm-hmm. And it's only $60,000. So there you go.
That's the Venice 2.
Yeah, this is $25,000, but it doesn't come with the camera.
On top of that, yeah.
So you have to add the camera to this extension.
Exactly.
This is definitely something for rental houses and studios. That's not the average person.
It's niche use case, but it is cool whenever they're just like, look, this is going to be an available option as opposed to like a one-off. We built this thing just for this one film.
You just need Hollywood money. The coolest thing that I saw there, we've kind of talked about this with Canon too, is but they're so small you can stack them side by side and then do like 3D video kind of applications. Would be cool.
In that case, the two lenses are. The center of them is 64 millimeters apart. So
that's pretty close to human, maybe not quite.
Yeah. The idea is there. I'm sure this was like a tack-on added thing they thought later. It's like, hey, why don't we just do this too?
Oh, yeah,
cool.
Perfect.
But it's cool. Yeah. Because you can't mash mirrorless cameras that close together in a lot of cases. So very interesting. Very interesting.
Moving on to something from high tech to low tech. We stumbled across this watch thanks to a listener. Actually, I think his name is Doug, sent this in to us. And he's it's like, you guys should check this out. It's a watch that can tell you the exposure settings for your film camera on the bezel. Yeah. So you going to wear this, Chris?
So I'm not a watch guy. I can't stand to wear watches, so I'm not. But I'm very happy. So one thing I should mention, this is a joint product between Nodus and Beers and Cameras. And Beers and Cameras, a friend of ours, Wani, Six-Pack, Wani, he and some friends started Beers and Cameras. It was a really nice idea of just getting photographers together in local areas to have some beers together, go take photos, do photo walks, just as a community. It was a really nice idea. And we actually even did Beers and Cameras back in the TCS TV days here in Calgary. We had our own branch here. And it's spread across all places. So really cool idea, just bringing people together. And Beers and Cameras has always had a real emphasis on analog photography, on, classic styling, and I think watches make perfect sense. So they've designed this watch, but it has a really nice feature because it's made for photographers, and it has on the ring a bezel that you can rotate to basically line up exposure data for sunny 16 rule, but also cloudy conditions. And so it's just a handy way for analog photographers to just quickly line up their aperture shutter speed combinations for the film that they're using, or of course, you could use it for digital, but what a travesty. All the photos show very classic film cameras, like M6s and M7s and classic Minoltas and whatnot. But yeah, it's just a cute idea. It's very stylish. It's very pretty. I just do those calculations up in my head, but it makes a lot of sense to have that on a watch because it makes sense for the rotating watch face.
So I just want to say, Doug, thank you for emailing me about this. I also want to apologize to Beers and Cameras because on March 11th, they emailed me. I have no recollection of this email. So I don't know what I was doing.
This is right up your alley.
What was I doing on March 11th that I was like not checking my emails? Because I'm usually a like meticulous email checker, but I must have been, I was very busy that day. I can see why I missed this. So I apologize. Doug, thank you for putting this back on my radar. And Beers and Cameras, I'm sorry. I will email you after this to apologize. But yeah, I should have seen this sooner. So my bad.
Yeah, I know Juan listens to this show as well, and he texted me while we were doing the Z5 II shoot in Utah that we're going to talk about later in this. So, I'm sorry it wasn't a long conversation, but I was very busy. The other thing I want to point out that I've always found weird is whenever we get together on, these photo trips or anything like that, the crossover between watch people and camera people is enormous. Yes. And I just, push my seat back, and I'm like, I have nothing to contribute to this conversation. But...
Yeah.
So
We're not watch
often
guys.
you'll get a bunch of people like, oh yeah, my camera collection is Oh yeah, but which watches do you wear? And everyone has an opinion, and it's bizarre to me.
So
It's a beautiful watch. It's a really nice design. I mean, it's expensive, but it's not ridiculous. I mean, as watches go.
no,
I
yeah,
know they
it's
can
watch
go-
priced, so it's
It's
not
watch
expensive.
price.
Here-
And Jaron, I could see you rocking something like this really nice.
So I'm talking to them about it to see if we like. I'd like to make a YouTube video about it, but
Yeah.
here's some. Well, I'll end this with a statement from Doug because it matches what Jordan said in an email. Doug sent it because he said, "I was actually thinking this would be a good topic as it combines two groups of enthusiasts that are detail oriented and fiscally irresponsible."
Yeah.
So correct. All right, moving on. We were talking to Rico Pentax in Japan last month.
Yeah.
And this was like near the end of that conversation. We were having lunch with them. And we were given, basically it would be business, from a business perspective, silly not to make a successor to the GR3. But it's going to, quote, come someday. And the guy we were talking to, his name's Saiki-san, he said, I don't know
cool.
if the new GR will come before or after I die, but it will come someday.
And he seems to be in pretty good health.
Yeah.
He was a very cool dude. It was a very cool dude.
It was a fun conversation.
I mean, it would make sense. I would like to see, there's merit to these fixed lens cameras, not ultra wide, but wide angle fixed lens cameras having higher resolution. So for me, naturally, I'd want to see a 40 megapixel sensor put into this line. I think that would be,
it's out there.
that would make sense, give you a bit more cropping room. We see this with the, the Q3. We've seen this now with the GFX 100 RF. And I mean, it makes a lot of sense to have that higher resolution for cropping. Yeah.
Anything else, Jordan?
We talked about a lot of stuff too. We were like, could we see a return of an analog version of this? Because like the Ricoh GRs were great analog cameras, very hard to get nowadays. Who knows? Who knows?
My impression from that conversation is that the Pentax 17 was a huge pain to make.
Yeah.
So they might be a little bit cautious in terms of rolling out a whole bunch of different film options in the future. I totally agree with Chris. I mean, the 40 megapixel sensor would make a ton of sense for this. It's a very slow readout, but it doesn't really matter if this isn't a video-centric camera and you don't have to worry about electronic shutter. Like, yeah, you got that Bang & Leaf shutter in there.
Yeah.
Just
it's all good.
drop it in.
Yeah,
That'd
be nice.
It is worth noting that when we talked to Saiki-san, he's like, I mean, we're not in a hurry to make another film camera because that was a huge lift.
Yeah.
But on top of that, the designer behind that camera
Just left.
Rico. So that's worth pointing out.
Behind the 17?
Yeah,
Yeah.
TKO.
Yeah. TKO, yeah.
He spent like 3 years working on this, and he's like, all right, I'm going to go take pictures now. See you later.
He's knocked out.
He doesn't want to. I think he quit. I don't think he was asked to leave. So it was just a personal choice. So
I'm more making an allusion to his name.
Oh yeah, I didn't even. I just breezed right past that mentally.
His technical knockout.
So anyway, Ricoh is a fascinating company as far as like when they decide to release a product. It's just whenever they feel like it.
They're like, why do we need a new version? We can't make nearly enough of the old one. And it's like 4 years old, maybe 5 years old at this point, and they still can't keep up. So
we will always continue to support them and review their products and stuff like that because we always have and we always will until, I don't know, we'll see what happens.
Stop.
Yeah. Or keep going. Who knows?
Last story of the week. I don't know if you guys watched Severance. I watched Severance.
I haven't seen it yet.
You should watch it. It's good. I'm not going to do
the
that
second season's done. It's time for me to just dive in and plow right through.
correct.
That's what I did with the first season as well.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm not going to do the thing Chris does, which is just get really upset that you're not watching something good. I'll just be like,
Appreciate that, Jaron.
Yeah, you should just watch it if you can.
I'm going to get upset.
But at the end of the season finale, Apple put a new product on their website. It's called the Lumen Pro. It is the computer that you see in the show. That's not really a spoiler. I will not scroll down on this in the screenshot that I'm showing on the podcast right now. So if you haven't seen the end of the second season, you will not be spoiled. But it's not an actual product you can buy. I did ask them, like, so do you have like a mock-up that I could even just like stick a Mac Mini in? Like, I want this thing, but running Mac OS. I think that would be cool. They laughed. I don't think I'm getting one, but
Someone's going to make it.
They at least this thing needs to be in someone's hands. Like if they can just hand me the dummy product, I will gut this and I will make it work myself. At any rate, I thought it was neat.
It'll be like a Fujifilm sweater. You're gonna go up to the set designer and just tear it out of their hands.
It's mine now.
I want that. It is mine.
I mean, editor-in-chief. But is it practical?
No. Oh, heck no. No, definitely not. The ball mouse is just like, that would be not fun to use. The keyboard, I don't love big clicky
Old
mechanical
school
keyboards,
clickety-clack
but you
keyboard.
do. You like those?
Oh, I don't mind it. Yeah, you know.
Anyway, it was just used as like a behind the scenes / like recap of the season. They put a video on the website, but I thought it was kind of neat as far as like marketing goes. There aren't very many companies that can do something like this, that make physical products for consumers, but also make TV and movies. So it was kind of a nice coalescence there.
But anyway, the whole article is worth checking out too for their workflow, which I found really interesting. They're like, oh yeah, it's all just running through a Mac Mini. Yeah. So everyone who's like, oh, you need like the cutting edge M4 everything if you're going to edit YouTube videos, like, shut up.
It's actually worse than that, Jordan. I think he has an iMac that he remotely onto a Mac Mini. So he's not even natively on the Mac Mini.
Yeah, but like the Mac Mini's doing the heavy lifting, right?
Yes,
that's what's got access to all the files. But yeah.
There you go. Okay, that's it for the news. Let's talk Z5 II. And so at this point, your guys' review has been released. That's why the podcast is a little late this week. We wanted to talk about this as a bit of a spoiler.
And not break embargo. Yeah.
I haven't seen the review, and I haven't read any of the materials.
Hasn't been briefed.
I have known nothing about this thing. So if you guys could recap for me a little bit what this camera is, and then we're going to talk about how it competes to similar offerings across the industry. So give me the high-level recap, Chris.
Okay, so I think the first thing that's important to understand about the Z5 II is it's not the Z5. So the Nikon Z5 was a really nice camera. We loved it because it was excellent value for the dollar. But the Z5 was designed from the start to be an affordable camera meeting a certain price point. You know, there are some compromises to it, although to their credit, they put a decent DVF into it. They gave dual card slots. Those are things that we didn't expect. And so the Z5 II, when we first heard about it, you see the name and the briefing, you're like, oh, a new version of an economical camera. But that's actually not the case. The Z5 II is actually really designed to be a jack of all trades, mid-level enthusiast camera, and even into pro cameras. So it's actually quite a powerful tool, and that's actually exciting. It's still fairly affordable. We're going to talk about that. It's sub $2,000, but it's quite an advanced camera. Has the dual card slots, has a 24 megapixel sensor, non-stacked. I mean, that's the key thing, right? So we're not getting the high speed video. We're not getting super fast frame rates. That is still the realm of things like the Z6 III or the Z8 if you want to go higher res. This is really, though, giving good image quality, excellent dynamic range, keeping things somewhat affordable. But the camera is actually a banger for like sports in action. It did a great job. We went to Moab in Utah. I've never been there before. I've always wanted to go, and it did not disappoint. Beautiful. We had help from Kyle Meshna, who's a local photographer at SLC. He came along to test the camera as well, and he was great to have as a resource, shooting a location we haven't shot before. We got to shoot mountain bike stuff, which is really cool. Lots of landscape, astrophotography. It was a really awesome experience. And it gave us a good test of the camera's capabilities and its ruggedness. And so I was really impressed by just how universal the camera is, how capable it is. It has IBIS. It has the latest autofocus, good sensor. I mean, it really, I could think of this as being a great wedding camera. I could think of this as being a great backup to a Z6 III or Z8 user. It's got a lot of utility.
I think the interesting thing is they kind of shifted basically, if you need speed, that's why you go up market at this point. But if you don't, then you're getting essentially, I mean, there might be some differences in terms of autofocus performance, but we were very impressed with how good the Z5 II was for tracking and things like that. Then, like Chris said, for event work, anything where speed is not your absolute requirement, like this is their well-rounded, your kind of mid-range camera. And most of the other camera companies are going up to that like $2,500 as their mid-range. So to see that come down a little bit, I think is really interesting. The other elephant in the room is the ZF, which Jaron has talked about on the podcast quite a bit. And when we did our predictions, I was like, I think they're going to bring out a Z5 with the Z6 II sensor. And everyone said, well, that's a ZF. They'd be totally cannibalizing the ZF. And that's exactly what they did. If you want retro, grab the ZF. Otherwise, save money, get the more affordable camera with basically the same performance in the Z5 III.
Yeah. So it's 24 megapixel. 24 megapixel. Go ahead, Chris. I'll ask.
No. It's the same sensor as the ZF. Image quality is going to basically be identical. Yeah. Well, I think it's going to cannibalize the ZF. The only real reason to go for the ZF is because you now want to pay the extra for the styling and the manual controls, the analog.
You want to be
controls. Hot. Yeah, you want to be hot. You want to be sexy. But that being said, I think the Z5 II is actually a better camera overall, just from the standpoint of using longer lenses. The grip is way better. Customizability controls, I think, are better. So, yeah, it's tough. I even think it's going to hurt sales on Z6 IIIs as well. I mean, because, like, here's the thing. I mean, Jordan's absolutely right. It's not made for speed, especially when you go to electronic shutter because you get rolling shutter issues. But in mechanical shutter, this thing will push 11 frames per second with autofocus and RAW. It'll actually go 14 frames per second if you're okay with JPEGs. But I mean, 11 FPS, that's 11
way
FIPS is plenty. Yeah, 11 FIPS is plenty for sports and action. And it handled like the mountain bike shots and stuff. I didn't feel like I was undergunned.
So my question before we get into all the cameras that it competes against, I've been hearing from Jordan about a 24 megapixel sensor that has been refusing to die. It keeps finding itself in new cameras. Is this that sensor still?
It is.
Yeah.
Okay. So
yeah,
clearly you can do stuff with it though. Still.
I mean, we've talked about how sensors have plateaued, right? So we're getting similar results to A7 IIIs. We're getting similar results to ZF, Z6 II, S5 II from Panasonic. I mean, it's all pretty ubiquitous at this point. BF, yeah. Like, it's a good sensor. Sensor technology plateaued. You'll like the image quality. And it will give you, remember, slightly better dynamic range than a Z6 III. So, you do have an advantage there if you really want to shoot landscape, high contrast stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, and the reason I say I'm bored with it at this point is the readout speed on it is hampering what you can do in terms of video performance. Yeah. But if you need that, then jump up market. Z6 III, Z8, all of those have you covered there. But photographically, it's still very usable, especially when it's combined with a mechanical shutter.
This beats the living crap out of like the Z6 II. If the Z6 II comes down in price in a big way, then that could be the new Z5, right? Where you have like an affordable, more entry-level camera for people that want to stay at the lowest budget. But if you can afford the extra cost, I really think this is going to give you a far more capable camera than the Z6 II.
Let's see how it ranks.
So, Jordan, why don't you explain how you wanted to do this, and we'll do it.
Okay, so here's my pitch now that we've got this new mid-range to entry-level full-frame mirrorless. I want to see how it compares to everyone else's. So Jaron is going to be dropping a company and their competing model as close as possible with the Z5 II. Chris and I will then select, would we take that camera or a Z5 II for our personal use?
Yeah, and why? Even though this is a full frame camera, not every company makes a full frame camera, but they do make cameras that are in this price tier. So we're not just focused on full frame, even though several of them will be. So first,
it'll be apples to apples, but then sometimes like apples to apple pears, and it's going to be a little bit.
Sometimes just apples to like a plate of nachos.
Pomelo.
A plate of nachos. What a callback to the beginning. All right, first one up is Canon and the R8. Would you take that or a Z5 II?
So I guess for me, the Canon R8's a nice camera. I enjoyed it. It has, I would say, a very similar autofocusing experience. The Canon R8's going to come out a little bit less money, but it's not going to have like dual card slots. It's not going to have the nice EVF. So I'd probably still go Z5 II. It just feels like a more put together all around camera where I wouldn't feel like I was ever hindered in any way in most photographic situations.
Yeah, when I grumped about the 24 megapixel, it's about the readout speed. That's the one advantage of the R8. It's using the R6 Mark II sensor. So electronic shutter is a little more usable on that. If you want the super fast FIPS, I guess we're calling it right now. But I wouldn't want to bring it on a professional gig for the battery life, lack of dual card slots, not very good electronic viewfinder on that. And the lack of IBIS is huge.
Huge.
So, I'm going R5 II all day.
R5 II? You mean Z5?
He's crazy.
Z5
II.
Yeah.
You know what? No, I want an R5 II as well. I would like to compare it to a $4,700 camera.
That's out of the price point. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Something worth mentioning too is that even though Nikon isn't the best because they still won't open up their mount to Sigma, they have more options beyond their own than Canon does.
Tamron 35-150.
Yeah, so you can't get that on Canon, and that to me is, I think, if there's ever like a tipping point between those two brands, I think Nikon wins there because you have more options. I like being consumer friendly.
But the R8's a nice camera, and it is less money.
The next one on the list is: do you want a Z5 II or do you want a Panasonic S5 II?
Oh. I like the S5 II. You know, it was a nice camera, good handling, good customizability, very similar specs, right? Very similar specs. But Panasonic, that was their first camera where they were trying their new phase detect hybrid autofocus. And I feel like as improved as it was, it's still not up to Canon, Nikon, Sony level. I think we have to appreciate that Canon, Nikon, and Sony, I shouldn't say Sony, they were already there, but Canon and Nikon have come a long way in really catching up. And all those autofocusing systems are like top of the line now. So I would still go Z5 II. I like the autofocusing experience. The IBIS is maybe better for stills, not as good for video. I mean, Jordan, that's probably something for you, hey?
Oh, I'm going to talk about that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, what is your pick, Chris? Would you go?
I'd go Z5 II. Yeah. I'd go, for photography, I still think Z5 II is a better way to go. Even though they're similar, I think the autofocusing experience, the sports in action, I'd be far more confident with the Nikon than with the Panasonic.
Yeah, for me, this is a really tough one. I would probably go with the Z5 II for fast action where I need to rely on the autofocus. I was actually quite impressed with how good the video autofocus was on that. But for everything else, and I do prefer the image stabilization on the Panasonics, Nikon, its default mode is way too jumpy. You can put it in sports mode. It won't fight you, but then it's also less effective than the Panasonic. The Panasonic as well, you've got open gate recording, which I find absolutely invaluable for doing a lot of social media work. And if things get complicated, I'm very comfortable jumping over to manual focus. I do that with the Panasonic all the time. But if you're less comfortable with that and want to rely on the autofocus, fast action, I think the Z5 II makes more sense. But they're so close, and that's what's really impressive, because most other times I'd be like, yeah, it's video. Go Panasonic, no question.
Yeah.
These ones are really close in price, too, because the S5 II is $1,700?
Yes.
Yeah, they're basically, with the current discount, they're the same price.
Yeah.
So that's different than the R8, which the R8 was like $500 cheaper. $400 cheaper.
Yeah, they're very
price,
similar. And they are spec-wise. I mean, both have dual card slots, which appeals to people who want to have that redundancy and backup. And
Similar
both have
EVFs.
good EVFs, you know, similar IBIS built in. Like, I do personally probably like the Z5 II body a little bit more, personally, just the way it feels, looks, and handles. I think the Nikon bodies are really good that way. But I have no complaints about the S5 II. I mean, it's a perfectly usable, serviceable camera. I enjoy using it. It's customizable. The controls you get used to. So, you know, from a sexy factor, maybe the Nikon's got a slight edge for me, but otherwise they're both capable cameras. I have no issues there.
All right, the next one is, would you take a Nikon Z5 II or a Sony A7C II?
Yeah. This is actually funny because this is a tough one because, you know, the Nikon is better pretty much in every way, shape, and form. I mean, my main thing against the 7C II is the EVF. Not great, but it's still it's usable. But it's a I don't like it. Yeah. But, you know, hey, as long as, honestly, Jaron, nowadays with all the cameras losing EVFs, I'm just happy if there's any EVF
that
on
it's
it.
there.
You know what I mean?
You've been shooting with the GM5 or whatever, and it's like that.
And I'm like, it's one of the worst EVFs
I
you'll ever
looked
find.
through it for the first time like
every way
2 weeks ago, and it was horrible. But I mean, at least it's there.
Yeah. I mean, look, the A7C2's got a lot of compromises. Let's talk about the one thing it does very well. 33 megapixel sensor.
Yeah.
Great sensor. Love it. But we are getting IBIS, which is nice. The autofocus is fantastic, which is nice. But again, poor EVF, only a single card slot, and they're really intended to do very different things. And why this is a tough call for me is I really like the compact nature of the A7C2. Like, it's a cool body to use from a walk around standpoint, put small lenses on it. You know, it kind of enters into that territory of like Sigma BF for me, you know, OM3 to some, like, you know, that kind of more on the street, fun kind of camera. But the Z5 II is a better camera otherwise in pretty much every way, shape, or form. And so I would still take a Z5 II over the A7C2, even if it's not as attractive on the shoulder. It's just far more capable, and it's honestly less money too.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. I was pointing out before you go, Jordan, is you can buy an A7C2 brand new today for $2,200. That's a significant premium.
That's a lens.
Yeah, that's a premium over what Chris just said is a worse camera in every way than what Nikon has done. So.
Yeah. And it's not like the Nikon's heavy or bulky. It basically has the same body as the Z6 III, but I still think there's merit to the A7C2 just being that sexy, uber compact, full frame camera. I think that's cool. You know, kind of like what Panasonic does with the S9 or whatever. So the Sony's it deserves love. It's a cool camera.
Yeah, I was basically going to throw it as vacation A7C2. I do like having that higher resolution sensor. Would be great for that. I'm not as worried about like backup cards and things like that. The EVF, I can deal with it if I know I'm going to spend a little time on a beach, you know, to like cool me down after the rage that viewfinder would give me. But for work, Z5 II, no question. Double card slots, feels great with larger lenses. And that's the other thing too is Nikon does need to flesh out their compact lens line right now. The third parties aren't filling that out. Sony have a ton of options. So I could put together like an itty bitty prime kit or something like that with the Sony.
Sure.
So yeah, vacation, C2, work, Z5 II.
But then I would argue, like, for the similar price point, this is where the ZF actually kind of does what the 7C2 does, right? And that could be your vacation camera where it's big, I know, but sexy, nice controls, nice on the shoulder, that kind of thing. And
yeah,
again,
if I was
A7C2,
planning to hook up on my vacation, ZF for sure.
Yeah,
have
ZF
that
for
around
sure.
your neck, it's going to happen for you.
Man,
Jeez.
yeah, Jaren's just drowning in it. But the A7C2, I mean, no mechanical shutter. That's kind of a thing too. Anyways, yeah, I think we've harped on it enough. Z5 II all the way.
So before we move on to the next one, I actually do have a question because Sony is now in an interesting position where they aren't winning in price or performance on their camera in this tier, and like the A7 IV would be another one you can consider in this general area, but it's $2,500.
Yeah.
So. What does Sony have to do? Like, they can't make an A7 V because that's going to be $2,500 too, so it still won't compete.
I wonder if Sony's going to continue the A7C lineup. I'm really curious. Like,
it felt like an offshoot to me when they did those two. Like, it's just kind of a neat little thing that they did, and then, okay, see you later.
Because that's the only place I would see potential is make a new version where you have more capability, but I don't know. I mean, I love the A7CR. I think that's really cool where you've got such a high resolution sensor in a small body. But yeah, I don't know.
I think really mirrorless was popularized by the A7 III because it hit that perfect like performance to price range. And it's weird that Sony kind of abandoned that when they moved up market with the A7 IV. So I'd love to see them do a capable, you know, again, maybe throw the older sensor in and do something similar to what Nikon did with the Z5 II. That would be great. But right now you are paying a bit of a body premium to get into that mount.
I mean,
Sony's kind of way of operating is that they keep the old cameras around, right?
Yes.
So the A7 III is like their legacy product to compete with this.
But I would take a Z5 II over that in a heartbeat. Like that autofocus, the stabilization, the viewfinder, everything's
100%.
outdated on that thing.
100%.
It is really interesting to see Sony in a position where they don't really have a camera that competes well against someone else's camera. I can't think of a time that has happened in mirrorless.
Yeah, at this range, it's really the A6700 in APS-C.
And why, all right, so the next one here is Fujifilm, who doesn't make full-frame cameras, but they do make the X-T5. So would you take an X-T5 or a Z5 II? Yeah, Apple pears. So the X-T5 is $1,700. It is also back-ordered. Classic.
Insane.
Can't get it. It's a Fujifilm camera.
I mean, It's a great camera. I like using the X-T5. So I have this kind of interesting relationship with Fujifilm where I like some of their cameras and some I don't, and I'm honest about it. I've never shied away from saying it. And so certain products I don't like, certain products do like. The X-T5 I do like. It's a nice camera. It always felt a little expensive for what it is, but at the same time, you're getting a really premium product. And so I love the look of it. It feels good. The controls are nice. I guess it would really come down to what I wanted to do with it. I still feel like Fujifilm's autofocus game is not on point. No doubt the Z5 II focus is better. And so I guess it depends on what you're going to do. If I was going out to Moab like we did, and I had the choice of taking both cameras, I would take the Z5 II because it is a confidence-inspiring camera where I could shoot astrophotography and get good results. I could shoot sports and action, get good results. I could shoot landscape, get good results, portraits and get good results. Like it's a very versatile camera that way. I never feel like I would be in a specialized situation. And the X-T5 is versatile, but it feels more like a specialized product. So the autofocus game, I feel like the Z5 II makes more practical sense. So if I'm thinking with my head, I would go with that. And I think a lot of people, if they're thinking with their heart, the X-T5's got a lot of appeal.
Yeah, that's exactly where I sit. Like the extra resolution on the X-T5 would be great for doing portrait, landscape, that kind of stuff. I think it would be excellent. But like you said, autofocus, Fuji's just still not there. You know, like you said, it's worse in video than in photo. But even in photo, sometimes it'll catch you completely off guard. Yeah. It's just not totally predictable. And no question, the Z5 II is a better video camera. So for me, like as a person who loves using the XT series cameras, like I had an XT3, it's one of my favorite cameras I've ever used. That does have a lot of appeal for me. That would be a great fun camera, but I'm not going to turn it into video mode through the drive button like a monster. So, you know what? I'm going to have to go Z5 II because video is how I pay my bills.
There you go. There you go.
It's worth noting that the X-T5 is not old, but it's getting there. Yeah. It's like late 2022.
It's true.
So
it's still current, but yeah, you're right. Like,
it's still back ordered.
It's people still want it. Yeah, I know it's not one that I would add as a competition to it. I would, but I've been using I used the XH2S when we were in Prague, and man, that camera's heavy. I don't know why, but boy, I just felt like I was carrying around a brick. Like it felt very heavy. So I don't know. Is the X-T5 lighter?
No, it's a little bit more svelte for sure. Yeah. Yeah, it is. It's a great camera. It just never pulled at my heartstrings the way it pulls at a lot of people, so that changes my opinion. But I could definitely see how a lot of people love it, and it would appeal. Yeah.
Yeah. XH2S is the Jordan-centric camera in the lineup for video shooters, but it's a hell of a lot more money.
Yeah. And you know what? I don't say this very often, but like I get the same feeling when I was holding the XH2S as I do when I hold a Panasonic camera, which is to say no emotional attachment to it whatsoever. It is just like a tool. That is to me odd when it comes to Fujifilm, since I like Fujifilm cameras make me like want something. They do something in my soul. Boy, the H2S does not do that. I know it's a bit of a sidetrack. I just wanted to point that out.
No, it's fair. The XH2 series were really designed to be more of their professional workhorse cameras. So ditch the appeal of the sexiness and really just give like the best technology.
Not hook up on vacation.
The XH2, by the way, you could argue is in the same also competitive tier because it's a sub $2,000 camera. But you know, I guess the T5
Jordan,
is more.
I know firsthand you love your wife more than anything, but like, are you going to start putting upside down pineapples on things and stuff? Like you're really concerned with this hooking up while you're traveling.
I think the aesthetic appeal is a huge part of a number of the cameras that we are currently talking about and will be talking about in the future. And for all my single friends or friends with a situation where that is part of the appeal, I think we need to express that the aesthetics can be important on some of these cameras. As the guy who likes to talk about sexiness in every single camera review, I think we need to bring it up.
Yeah, but like I'm talking about sexiness, like how a Ferrari is sexy, right? Or how like a muscular Aston Martin is sexy. It's not necessarily about actual sex.
So, Jaron, can we like move on?
I wanted Chris to say it like that. I was waiting for it.
Just like, are you guys going to start swinging? Like, that's cool. No judgment. I think that's cool. Like, you know, so are you going to review cameras from the purpose of swinging? I think that's awesome.
So if we were to pick between a Z5 II and an OM system OM3, which would you pick?
There is a camera that will get you laid. Right there. So this is funny because this is kind of like my Fujifilm. The OM system OM3 really that camera does get my my juice is flowing.
It is just barely sub 2,000 though.
It's so expensive. It's so expensive.
If it was $400 cheaper, I think it's a little more convincing, but
I'm a Micro Four Thirds apologist. It's obvious. Like I just love the smaller sensors. I'm the last one of our kind. Maybe me and Emily. That's about it. I just really like the smaller sensor. I like the tiny lenses. I like that you can get bigger lenses and they're still not huge.
Or you can get a huge lens if you really want one. You could get that converted Sigma lens.
Yeah.
And so it's like, I love the OM3. I think it's a beautiful camera.
He's struggling with this one.
I don't know.
If you're just listening, he's rubbing his temples.
That's worth
this is
noting.
a tough one for him.
That is saying something, that he is actually that conflicted about it. So Jordan,
I like shooting the OM3. Like I enjoyed shooting it. I totally recognize it's not nearly as versatile. So again, I'd be a hypocrite if I said I would take it over the Z5 II because for the same reason, the Z5 II is a better camera for the money, no doubt. But I love the OM3 and it's a more specialized.
It's like you
tool.
don't want to admit that you're not the OM3.
You know what? I'll just say this. I would take the Z5 II in pretty much every situation except street photography. And then I would take the OM3, even though the Z5 II would probably do a better job. So let's just never talk about that again.
And I think it's interesting because it's Micro Four Thirds. This is the only camera with a stacked sensor that we can drop in this list. So if you do like using an electronic shutter and shooting super fast birds, like, you got some BILFs out there, then there are real advantages to using an OM3 out there and knocking out like 60 full resolution images a second. With actually pretty respectable tracking.
Yeah.
But I mean, for me, I will take image quality in the majority of my photographic pursuits. And theoretically, the OM3 should be an amazing video camera. That sensor is capable of it, but we keep harping on this. There's just not a ton of R&D going towards video with OM system right now. So I'm going to go Z5 II all day long. Although, again, that OM3 is beautiful. It's going to look great around your neck. But when I got to get work done, Z5 II.
Yeah.
Last one.
I agree.
Last one. This one is very much how it looks around your neck. If you choose to wear it like it, it would be very uncomfortable. Sigma BF or
Z5 II. Z5 II easy. Just Z5 II. I don't even need to talk about it. No. And look, I totally, everybody's like, you just don't get it, bro. You just don't understand, man. And I totally do. I get it. I get the Sigma BF. I get what the design is. I get the heritage. I get the personal desire on behalf of the team and the CEO to want to make this product. I get that they don't give a damn what people think. I think that's respectable, but no. Yes, no. The Sigma BF is the best camera to get side-eye looks when you're walking around CP+. I'll give it that. Like, it does that better than nobody else. But no, the Z5 II is a way better camera in every way, shape, and form except as a cheese knife.
I mean, I think if you want to meet people at a ski hill, BF all day long, because that was my experience. But
there you go.
I mean, no, I want a Z5 II.
Okay, but here's another question, Jordan. Out of all the cameras we've talked about, as a swinger, which do you think would get you the most action? Of the ones we talked about.
Oh, God, it's got to be the Sigma BF, right?
What would be the most, just no resistance?
Well, I mean, it would be the BF because people would be scared to reject you because you also have a blunt, sharp instrument with which to threaten them.
Wow.
Not that I would suggest that in any way. You know what? I don't enjoy this digression.
I don't think you do.
I like your violence, your violence fetish with. I mean, again, not judging. Totally cool. I support you in your endeavors. I'm an ally to you, Jordan.
All right. That'll do it. You guys can make your own decisions about what camera you'd like if you're in the market for this sort of thing. On that note, let's get into what have you been up to, and I'm going to tell you guys what Chris was up to well, recently because the film came back and I want to talk about it.
Ooh.
He shot a roll on my Bessa R2A with Thypox's new 75mm lens. And he saw the pictures this morning because I just sent them to him. But I'm looking at them now, and I'll put some on screen. These will be
you're going to show my photos?
Yeah,
Ooh.
I'll show several of your photos. These will be part of the review that he's working on. It'll be, I think, at the end of this month, if not early next month. I wanted him to shoot it on film because this might be a camera that folks would want to put on a film camera.
Yeah.
And he was shooting on Oriental Seagull, which he likes.
Nice film.
Good
nice
film, black and
soft
white.
Tonality. Yeah, soft tonality. I liked it. Beautiful grain.
There are some bangers in here. So
Thank
bangers.
you. Yeah,
bangers.
I like some of those shots are pretty good, if I do say so myself. I mean, first off, Prague was a beautiful location to shoot. It's great street photography city. Thank you for letting me touch your baby. The R2A, it's like so nice to shoot. I love the clickety clackities, the shutter, and the thumb winder, and all that kind of stuff. So it was a fun experience. That kind of focal length is one of my favorites. I really jive with that focal length. I love it. And I'm glad that I was able to shoot film. So I appreciate that, Jaron, because it's like that gives you just another aspect to look at of how it's going to approach that medium. But of course, I'm also going to test it on the A7R5 on a digital sensor with high resolution. So we can really see.
Looks sharp. Looks really sharp. I'm
sure
pleased. Anyway, that I kind of still there it is. Yeah.
There it is. Sexy
Pretty.
lens. I mean, like, look, the machining's beautiful. I do like the depth of field scale, even though this lens doesn't really give you much depth of field because it's a fast 75. But, I like the way that they machine everything. It's hot, man. It's sexy. But I still want to see, shooting black and white film doesn't really give you any information as far as chromatic aberrations, obviously flare and stuff like that change in the way they look and represent, ghosting and things. So we're going to definitely do all that as well. But it's a nice little lens. Beautiful. The aperture, is like round AF. You can't see it, but it's round.
No, you got to take that back cap off.
Yeah.
I just love that I'm going to be looking at images from Prague for the next, 3-4 months? It's just in my inbox every once in a while. We'll be like, oh, that is quite round.
That is so weird. Oh, I love it.
Look how round it is.
Is that the thumbnail for this podcast, even though it has nothing to do
just
with...
like nothing to do. That is so strange. Anyway, that was I stole a little bit. I'll take that as what I've been up to, is looking at Chris's pictures from
Thank you.
75. So what have you guys been up to?
It has been confirmed are bangers.
Yeah, bangers.
Jordan, what have you been up to?
So I listened to the barrage of comments I got on all of my social media feeds and watched Adolescence, the new Netflix show, which is famous because every episode is one take and they didn't actually fudge it. And it is very compelling. It's incredibly well acted. That kid, for them to, it's basically a stage play. Like, hey, you have to be in character for an hour unbroken is just staggering to see. But at the same token, guys, not everything needs to be a oneer. I really felt like some of the compositions, I was like, man, it'd be nice to cut here, or, we don't have to follow the Steadicam shot to get into the next angle at this point. I understand how they want it to be like if a shot is unbroken, it adds a natural tension, which this certainly did. But at the same point, I do feel like it compromised some compositions in order to actually achieve that. Mm-hmm. And the other thing, I got to go out here and just say, grade your TV shows and movies. For the love of God, I can't watch another thing that looks like someone forgot to actually grade the log footage out of the camera. It's so desaturated. There's a little bit of contrast in it, but I found it, especially when you move to outside scenes and stuff, like I know it's very trendy right now. And again, it's become synonymous with grittiness, this desaturated thing. I'm tired of it. I think it's aging about as well as overdone Golden Teal a few years ago.
Wow,
you're going to make your project look dated if you don't add a little saturation and contrast to it. So please knock it off. But I cannot say enough for the focus pullers, Steadicam operators, and actors on Adolescence. And as a whole, it's a very compelling, very upsetting series. And it's very good. But
so that's funny.
I have suggestions.
I watched the same thing. That's what I did too. My wife and I watched Adolescence, and it was very gripping. I agree with a lot of what you said. Very well acted. I mean, I feel like the grade, the oneer, they're obviously trying to make it look grounded in reality. I mean, that was really the whole goal, right? They don't want it to be sensationalized. They're not trying to draw the eye away with beautiful visuals. I mean, the cinematography isn't stunning, as you say, right? Like, you're limited by the sets you can use. You're limited by the just the technical nature of doing oneers, right? I mean, they do have a very interesting scene where they go to a drone, and that was quite powerful. That was quite interesting to tell the story.
That worked great. Again, it worked a lot of the time.
Yeah.
I just feel like if it's not working for you to build tension, the whole appeal of the show is it's a oneer, like, just break it, and the rest of the show can be a oneer where it plays well.
I find oneers are often technical masturbation more than anything else. And I agree with you in that I don't think that it really brought a lot to the story, right? I think the acting was so good. And there's part of it where you're watching, you're like, holy crap, this is one take, all the acting, all the possible mistakes, the amount, but I don't want to be sitting trying to invest myself in these characters. And what I'm thinking in my head is partially like, how did they do that? Like, what, like, that must have been a technical difficulty that's like really I don't want to be thinking about that stuff. Like, I want to be able to remove myself from that and be completely lost in the experience. So I actually found that to be negative. I didn't mind the grade though. I thought that was fine I mean, it's England. I mean, it's the UK. It's always great.
A bunch of the most beautiful TV shows ever made over there.
Yeah, but
get the Downton Abbey colorist in there and just
they don't
add
want it
a
to be
little life
happy
to the background.
They don't want it to be happy. They want it to be somber and grounded. Anyways, the acting was brilliant. Like, if you haven't seen it, you should definitely see it. Certainly an important message. Certainly makes you think about a lot of stuff afterwards. And super powerful.
All right. Let's move on to Never Read the Comments, the section where we make sure to read every comment. And I have one here from Michael Peterson on the Camp Snap video. This has to be the first time I've seen someone compare a Leica to a Camp Snap. Kudos to Chris for keeping a straight face while he did so. Did you lose a bet?
I did not lose a bet, Michael. No, it was just, I was trying to think, like, how do we work a KEH ad into this, right? Because you're not gonna find KEH selling a lot of Camp Snap cameras used, I don't think. So I was just like, well, let's do something ridiculous. So it worked out well.
No Screen was our gateway into that ad read.
Yeah, and it just happened to be 100 times more expensive. Roughly. So yeah, it's perfect. Okay, let's do it.
Veselin Vasilev says, wait! Evelyn is Jordan's wife? Who the heck is Dave then?
Dave is their love child.
So just because two people appear on camera does not mean they're necessarily in a committed relationship. This is a mistake that's been made with Chris and I constantly over the years. And I know it's exacerbated by the Watsons and the Northrops and everything like that, but Dave and Evelyn are coworkers who present on camera together. She is my wife, and we are in love and have stayed together for a very long time. Dave is not part of that. This is not...
Yes, well, Jordan,
to go back to Chris's aesthetic.
There's a swinging thing. Are you going to swing with Dave then?
No. No offense, Dave, but no.
Look,
perfectly nice person.
You can totally be committed and still have an open relationship, and so I think that's cool. That maybe that's a phase for Jordan and Evelyn. That's not our business, but that's
yeah, you're right. I'm sorry I asked. I mean, if he wants to do that in his own private time, that's fine.
I thought that was a harmless comment before everything totally started here, but I didn't know the shift this episode.
Harmful comment, yes. And then I got another one here from our friend Yawning Marmot, the best name for a YouTube comment.
Yawning Marmot.
When are you making a new wooden nickels? You could also cast Jaren this time. All I'm saying is it's been a while. Now, Jordan, I came up with an excellent idea for a wooden nickels while we were in Prague, and it's related to the GM5. I think you need to do the dragon from like where he's it's the Hannibal movie, right? Where he's like in the attic and he's showing slides to someone who's like taped to a chair.
Oh, from Red Dragon?
Yeah.
And Manhunter.
Yeah, so Jordan, you need to be taped to a chair with like your head taped to it too, as Chris says. Like, do you see all his pictures of the GM5?
I love it. That sounds great. I mean, I really enjoy doing wooden nickels, but they are weeks and weeks of setup. And at 2 episodes a week plus a podcast, it's really hard to put that all together. And a lot of my friends in the film business have moved to Toronto or Vancouver or LA, also making it a little bit more difficult. So
I'm sure if we
did another wooden nickels, it would be back to its origin, which is like 2 of us bumbling around trying to do something that would inevitably wind up less professional.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure we could find crew to help us out. There's always creators around that would love to do that. I think it's, although we might have to go out of our usual stable, so to speak. But the hard part is actually coming together on what kind of scene we want to do.
So you don't like my idea?
We haven't agreed in 5 years.
Yeah, it's tough to agree on a scene. You know, because we've done a lot of art films and stuff, which we agree on. I mean, we do agree on those. But, you know, mainstream would be good. Maybe doing some more famous scenes would be good. But again, it's like the practicalities of it, the crew required, the cost, the timing to get everybody together. It's tough, but we'd love to do it. I mean, it's just at this point, we're kind of just leaving it as when the planets align, it will happen. But yeah.
Let us know in the comments. Have you seen either Red Dragon or Manhunter? And that'll give us an idea of whether or not Jaron's suggestion.
Do you see? It's also the way that it would work also is like there's a South Park like little like snippet that's similar with Cartman being forced to watch a slideshow of his vacations. It's like, this is me standing in Mexico. Do you see? Oh God, so bored.
I was thinking just go full Scarface, and Chris is like, say hello to my little friend, and then it just tilts down and it's a very small camera and no one dies and everything is peaceful and happy.
But we could set Jordan's puppet on fire. That would be pretty. That would be pretty cool. Anyway,
You better get
I
that
love
take.
my puppet. Do not burn Puppet Jordan.
All right. That's it for Never Read the Comments. Let's move on to tech support.
All right.
This one is a YouTube comment from Voitko Edward. Love listening to the podcast, and I have a question for Jordan about HLG versus log video.
Got you covered.
Which is best for color correcting? My understanding is that HLG and log have the same dynamic range and color correction capabilities. I understand that HLG is intended for HDR, but if I apply the correct color space transformations or LUTs to both, will I get the same result in Rec 709 at the end? Am I correct?
So it does depend on the HLG profile. There's some classic examples of cameras like the Panasonic GH5, where you would actually get more dynamic range using the HLG profile than their Vlog-L. Is an option on that. But generally speaking, especially with modern sensors, the HLG is designed to kind of stretch up to fill the dynamic range of an HDR display, which is usually around like 11, 12 stops. But we are seeing log profiles that have a wider dynamic range than that. So it depends on the camera model that you use. More importantly, yes, you can bring HLG back into a much more neutral color space and then play with that, as long as none of the color channels oversaturate. That's the big issue that we ran into, because Chris and I shot on the GH5 in HLG for a while to get more dynamic range, but if there was something very saturated, that color channel would clip. And while theoretically you have more information in HLG than log, I've found starting with a desaturated color space is a better beginning point for it. Although I will say with HLG, you get to look at a nice punchy image while you're filming, which is kind of nice. But more importantly as well is you might be able to get an HLG to a 709 correction, but there's not a huge community out there for different looks where you will be able to find every manufacturer's log profile to a whole bunch of different looks. There's just a bigger community out there for you to take advantage of. But if you want to hand grade, HLG is just a good midpoint. It just doesn't make as much sense. I'd rather have the most potential DR and flexibility in post if that's important to me, which is why I would shoot log.
There you go.
The next one is an email from Dagwood Streets, and the reason I left this in, it's typically we don't answer these where someone's asking for a specific camera recommendation, but this one has an interesting slant to it, and it made me think a bit. So let me read it. I have a YouTube channel based in Thailand, and I love to shoot Thai everyday people on motorcycles. For video, I like to shoot slow motion, and for photography, I like blurred backgrounds, and 90% of the time I shoot at night for both video and stills. I find it difficult switching modes in the dark on my R8 because I prefer looking at the camera top versus an EVF or LCD when changing modes. I have been searching for cameras with a top screen LCD to get a handle on what mode I am in and my settings. That's the angle I was at. We're not seeing that as often as we used to. It used to be basically a given, and they're not on every camera anymore.
Yeah.
So he says, my price range is about $2,500, so I'm looking at either the original Canon R5 or switching to a Nikon Z6 Mark III. Oh yeah, another issue I feel like I'm missing on the Canon R8 is the joystick for focus.
Sure. Yeah.
And he says, I'm invested in RF lenses. Why is it so hard to do an internet search and find cameras that have a top-mounted screen? In this price range, I have narrowed it down to an R5 or a Z6 III. Options or suggestions?
Yeah. It's one of those design cues that we kind of see randomly pop up, and what am I trying to say? It's like it's a very sort of intentional desire to have it on certain cameras. Like when the designers talk about it, they always point out like, oh, we went with a top mount LCD. Like it's kind of polarizing. I personally don't care about them, but I do understand that you're trying to shoot in low light situations. So there is some merit there if you want to look at the top. I just look at the back or the EVF. I prefer that anyways. So top mount LCDs to me actually just take up real estate for controls. And so I'm not a big fan of it, but I know a lot of people love that. You know, for full frame, you're in the right realm, R5 or Z6 III. I mean, the original R5, you can get it for a decent price. It's still a fantastic camera. Like there's no issues there. It's a good sensor, nice image quality. The focus is decent. So you could certainly use that. Z6 III would be great. You certainly won't get a top mount LCD on the new Z5 II, so that's not an option.
I will say in low light, the original R5 is not my favorite.
Right.
I used to use it for shooting televisions, and in here, my light, I usually keep it dim so I don't get any reflections on them. And I don't know, hunts. It hunts a little bit, and I don't like that. And I think if you're shooting at night and shooting motorcycles, that's going to be a problem.
Yeah, it's the tricky thing is the R8 is the second most recent Canon autofocus system. So going to the R5 will actually be a little bit of a step back for you in that regard.
Yeah.
I think the top LCDs, it's just how manufacturers are saying professional now. And that wasn't always, you think about the earlier digital Rebels and stuff, they all had top mount LCDs. It used to just be a standard feature on camera, but now it's become a differentiator between a pro model and a consumer model. Just as a means of segmentation, I think. So that means, you're going to have to go upmarket or something used, unfortunately.
The next one is a speak pipe from Joel. And Joel, you asked this question a while ago, so this should put in perspective how behind we are months-wise to our speak pipes and emails. But this goes back to our conversation about what Micro Four Thirds has to do this year. So let's listen to what Joel has to say.
Hi, Jaron, Chris, and Jordan. My name is Joel, and I hail from beautiful Vancouver Island. With regards to what Micro Four Thirds must do, yes, I would love to see a new GX camera. My introduction to digital cameras was with the GX8, and if I had my druthers, I'd be quite happy to have that with updated specs. But as smaller seems to be the way the wind is blowing, a new GX9 is probably what we would get. If they do that, my wish would be for a flippy screen and the larger and still tilting viewfinder of the GX8. And speaking of viewfinders, in an age of parallaxless electronic viewfinders, why don't we see more rangefinder-style cameras? I love the ability to open my left eye and get a better idea of what is going on around me without having to lower the camera. Are center-mounted EVFs just a vestigial feature that we need to move past? Controversial hot take here, Jordan. Please keep your gas to a minimum. I'm a stills photographer that has fallen in love with the Pan Leica 10-25 f1.7. It's so good, I'm sorely tempted by the 25-50, even though I rarely shoot in that range. Jordan, you said you feel like Panny needs to make a show-off lens. How about they complete the triumvirate and make a 50-100 f1.7? I would buy that lens in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
Thanks for all you do. I love listening to the show every week. Peace.
So before you agree with him, I mean, you already did wholeheartedly. I want to point out that I also like having one eye open when composing with a camera, and I typically only get to do that when I'm shooting vertical. So I have this and my other eye is open, and I usually keep it open. Then I end up blocking it with when I turn to shoot in landscape. So I kind of am with him. Why don't we see that more?
I think the main thing, I mean, here's the greatest camera of all time. the Panasonic GM5. The main issue is when you put a rangefinder style EVF, you limit how much screen space you have on the back, right? Which can be a problem for smaller cameras, not so much for bigger cameras. I like the side-mounted EVF personally.
I see you with your eye open too, Chris, when you're shooting with
once in a while. Yeah, once in a while it's nice. I just like that it clears my nose. You know what I mean? Like I like being able to do that. It is nice that you can look. I do use my left
Better
eye.
for thumbnails.
I don't use my I don't use my left eye while shooting, Jaron, but what I do is I like to open up my left eye to scan the area, in a street photography situation to see like, oh, is that person coming? Is that person coming over there? And then I can close it to actually shoot through the EVF.
It's also
always
helpful
open it.
if you've got a hell of a long zoom and you're like, where is that thing I was just seeing? I open my eye and like, there it is, and 100%. I can go track it, as opposed to dropping the whole camera, looking again, and then moving.
Totally.
I think the side-mounted one is a vastly superior design.
I still think, though, the top LCD, it's not just vestigial. I mean, obviously, it did come from the SLR days where, by necessity, it had to be lined right over the mirror box. But I do like the fact that having the hump on the camera does give it kind of a classic look. I like the aesthetics of it in a lot of cases. I like both. But I also like the fact that it does free up the space for a screen, right? Because what you'll see on a lot of modern mirrorless cameras, you've got a nice large EVF on top, and then you have the screen right below it, and that can make the camera quite compact body-wise. Even though you've got the prism sticking up, you do have a smaller body height, and I do think that's a benefit for most situations. Like take cameras like the Fujifilm X Pro series, which had it side mounted. The camera itself had to be quite tall in a lot of cases. I don't know. I don't mind either way.
I have a tiny bit of insight here from talking to the camera manufacturers. We saw this with Fujifilm with the XE series, which sold far worse than the XTs, even though initially they were the same guts with two different designs. We saw this with Canon with their M series cameras. The ones with a centered electronic viewfinder sold far better than the ones with the one on the left side.
Yeah.
And there was one, the Panasonic as well. We also heard that from the manufacturers. So people are looking for something reminiscent of a DSLR if they're planning to spend quite a bit of money. It just seems to be a sales thing. And some people are like me. I'm left eye dominant. So having that on the left side doesn't actually really improve things for me. It just means my nose pokes at the LCD a little bit more. So I always have to disable that. But outside of that, it just seems to be sales numbers overall. But I do think there's renewed interest in rangefinder style cameras right now.
I think in large part because of Fujifilm existing and being so popular. Jordan, 50 to 100 f1.7?
Yeah, I would love to see that. And I don't disparage anyone. The 10 to 25 is a brilliant photo lens. I use that for all kinds of family shooting, landscape, even astro. I've used that guy for. It's a wonderful lens for photography as well. It's just you're paying a big premium in order to get that. For photography, you're also getting all the video capabilities of it. I will say my favorite combo, if you're looking to kind of get that extra reach on there, is the 10 to 25 paired with the 75mm 1.8 Olympus. I can do almost anything with that combo when I'm on vacation and want to travel light.
All right, the next one is actually related to Micro Four Thirds. It's an email from Saw. I caught wind of the new OM3. I've been in the market for an upgrade or a second piece of gear. Currently, I use the Mzuiko 100 to 400 with an OMD EM1.3. I guess that means Mark III.
EM1.3, yeah.
I mostly do landscape and wildlife, primarily wildlife. I also have a Panasonic Lumix G25 f1.7 ASPH. Not super happy with this lens, likely just a compatibility issue. And I wanted to ask, is it worth trading in my EM1 Mark III for an OM1 Mark II and pay whatever difference it might be? Or do I hold on to the EM1 Mark III and get an OM3? I work as a wildlife technician, so I get to work in some very cool remote places that most people can't ever set foot in, aka perpetually broke. Anyway, living the actual dream. But this also means in times gear can be very restricted. Think living out of the back of a backpack weighing 30 to 40 kilograms, which is why I switched from Canon to Olympus. The small form and the 2X Micro Four Thirds means I can carry one or two lenses and be very happy. I think that as a Canadian, the $3,100 price on the OM3 is rather steep, but because it comes with a more compatible lens as part of the kit and being a 25mm f4 Pro, I could have a proper everyday carry lens until I can afford more. I know it's more about the lens than the body, but in a way, I'm also hoping to future-proof myself a little bit. Part of me thinks this is the OM1 Mark II is the best option, but I'm not sure I can afford it without doing a trade-in. It's on sale for a rebate for $2,700. I could just live without a street lens. So any help here would be appreciated.
So my first thought, as much as I love the OM3, I don't think it would make for an ideal outdoor camera, mostly because the grip itself isn't very comfortable with longer lenses. I mean, that is one of the main weaknesses on the OM3. The OM1 II, I think, is one of the best outdoor adventure kind of cameras on the market. So I would say that's a great way to go, but I would maybe just find an original OM1. You know, the OM1
It's not that different.
Yeah, it does. It's not that different from a capability standpoint, but you could get a better price on it. So an OM1 would be a great option. That being said, I mean, the EOS Mark III and the OM1 feel very similar from a familiarity standpoint. I do like some of the new subject detection modes on the OM1. And again, as Jaron said, the autofocus experience and stuff isn't really that different. So I'd say that's probably still your better bet for that kind of camera with longer lenses, shooting wildlife. They are insanely rugged. There's no issues there. So as much as I love the OM3, it is a little bit pricey, and I think it's definitely more suited for on the street as opposed to in the woods.
I have try and get through maybe one or two more here. This one's pretty quick. Chuck emailed us and said, as an OM1 user and an avid fly fisherman, I would love to know what lenses Chris takes on his trips. I have been using a point and shoot, but would want better landscape and animal shots. I have a 12-100 and a 100-400 OL lenses. What do you use, Chris?
Well, yeah, I actually already the kit that they have. So the 12-100 is still my like premium fly fishing lens. I'm not doing as much photography. When I take that out, I'm using more video, but yeah, I like the extra depth of field because when you are shooting action in sports, sometimes it's nice to have that leeway. I like the long telephoto range. I can shoot across a river and still get lots of scenes. I can also get nice photos, though, of fish release shots where, you know, often people get really close to shoot photos of fish. I really like getting quite a bit further back with a long telephoto, low to the water. It really compresses the subject. It really makes the fish stand out, but you also get to see a lot of the background. And you don't normally get to see that in a lot of fish shots. So unless you're trying to protect your favorite fishing holes, I prefer that aesthetically as a photograph. But yeah, you've got the kit that I would normally recommend. It's nice to have maybe like a wider angle fast lens, like a 12 mil 1.2 or something like that, or 12 mil f2, something like that, so that you can get those lower light shots and close-up shots when it gets dark. But honestly, I think you already have good kit there.
Yeah, I was just going to point out, I mean, you've already got a 1-4, so you're pretty set that way. But we never reviewed this, and I actually took out the new Panasonic 1-4 to shoot some skiing. My kids were in a rail competition over the weekend, and comparing this just size-wise to the OM version that's based on a full-frame lens, this is really, really manageable, and the autofocus on it is killer. So if you're starting from scratch and might be doing some wildlife and stuff, I would take a good long look at the Panasonic Leica 1-4 version 2. I was actually pretty impressed with it.
All right. That is going to do it for tech support this week. We're going to end the podcast with the feel-good story of the week, which is a twofer.
Wow. It's a double good week.
We
can feel twice as good.
So the first one I have on here is a story about how photographers celebrated Flacco the Owl's Year of Freedom in New York. So if you don't know who Flacco the Owl is, he was a Eurasian eagle owl that escaped its enclosure in New York City's Central Park in 2023, and it was visible in the park in all of the city for a year.
He hero.
Beautiful bird. Eventually did pass away though, but these are some really pretty photos of a gorgeous owl. I mean, in New York, being a sweet owl. So I thought that was nice. It's a good story worth looking into.
It's a fun combination of like street photography and wildlife photography
rare
together.
Yeah. I like this one of Flacco on a tractor.
Did the owl hunt like hot dog pieces and French fries dropped on the ground? Is that how it survived?
Probably hunted squirrels. There's a lot of
pizza.
There's a really cool one. The silhouetted on a water tower against the skyline. That's really pretty.
Nice.
And then the other story is that Germany has officially recognized film photography as a cultural heritage. And
as they should.
As a film photographer myself, this makes me happy. It's part of the UNESCO's Cultural Heritage Program. So there you go.
I think we've seen a beautiful thing here with the older generation, aka Chris Nichols, passing on film knowledge to the younger generation, Jaron Schneider. I've been witnessing this as they travel around through Japan and discuss film stocks, and I think it's really beautiful to see that that transfer of knowledge, and for Germany to accept it as something like basket weaving or whatever else they also said is a cultural skill that needs to be passed on. I think is noble and beautiful.
Well, sure, absolutely. I mean, wow, I don't know how to follow up with that. So yeah, but very cool. I mean, we have to give Leica its credit, and I know it was a team effort. There's a lot of people that were kind of pulling it together, and the more pedantic people say, well, but regardless, I mean, Leica as a company, they really are, sort of credited with popularizing 35 millimeter film as a photographic tool for the masses. And I don't think there's any argument that has really led to the explosion in popularity of photography over the decades and brings us to where we are today in all of its various forms. So yeah, I think it's a really cool thing to remember and to hold on to.
Yeah, people
protect,
need to be
conserve.
trained to keep this skill alive. So I think it's absolutely something worth saying. Like, this is something that needs to be preserved. The ability to do that with an analog process, much like keeping languages alive and other things that we consider culturally important to preserve.
All right. With that, that's the podcast for this week. Next week will be, oh my God, Jordan. I can see
Jaron,
what you're doing.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Next week we will, the three of us. That looks really uncomfortable, Jordan.
Yeah, it's out of focus, and I'm sure your back hurts.
Next week,
Sorry to listeners.
We will be podcasting from the floor at NAB. We're going to be
find us.
You find Road. Look for Road. We'll be there on Monday afternoon. Yeah, you can absolutely come say hello while we're recording, and Chris will happily wave at you and be distracted by whatever.
And when we're not recording, please, by all means, a big part of why we want to go there is to catch up with some of the people in the same field as us. So please come say hi if you see us.
I think Jaron should buy an M6. I think it's time. I think
that's important for analog cultural heritage, for you to pass that skill on.
Yep.
Kind of money.
Yeah. You only live once, bro.
On film.
Yeah, come on.
Okay. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you next week at NAB. Bye.
Bye.